scale of the project?
I think it's what you said on the last phrase. It's like much more the mindset. But on the other hand, for me, architecture goes beyond the let's say the structure or the building of the actual space. But it's also actually, as an architect, I mean, we creating space for people to live in it, but also to live with their objects, with their belongings. So it means like, I mean, this kind of scales that you see going from a door handle to a large scale architectural building is for me all called architecture. I also refer a bit to Bauhaus. I mean, also to this world of Gesamtkunstwerk, where actually you have all these different people of different backgrounds with different skills, and also architects that have to deal with textiles, with with furniture pieces. So it was literally, you know, one world. So and that's actually what I thought, what was my point of interest when I finishing my studies as an architect, that actually I wanted to know how people were living inside their houses, and therefore I really wanted to complete my activities as an architect, focusing really from the design from one door handle to the full large scale building, let's say.
And Vincent, let's go into big scale architecture and interior. You are like a human architect, and the art of living, well-being, like to feel well and comfortable at home are central in your work. So here we have some images of your interiors. If you can tell us about your concept, how you make us feel good in your spaces.
Well, I mean, it's true. I'm paying a lot of attention to the well-being of the people, and I mean also the fact that a house should be a place where people are feeling protected. I always call it also kind of like my own house, like a little bit like a sanctuary, where people are really disconnected from the hard, fast track of the world rhythms, and where people are really making or taking much more attention to the quality of life. And I mean, specifically right now, I mean, even in this period we're living right now, it's super delicate. I mean, I think the house at itself is extremely important. So and actually what I'm doing is I'm always trying to understand my clients, to understand what they want, to understand the context where I have to interfere, and these all specific elements, they're inspiring me and setting up like kind of like as you said, like some mind sketches that I'm building up very fast to understand and to see how I can respect and translate introduce even the demands of my clients into a house where they're living in it. And I mean, of course, besides, I mean, this kind of storytelling and living within these people's houses, I think all of these functions are all part again of architecture. I mean, none of my interiors are disconnected from the outside. I mean, they're all interrelated, and I will never disconnect my architecture from the interior. So it's one continuum, which I believe also in terms of materials. I mean, my style is pretty much timeless. I'm using a lot of natural materials like woods, different textures of woods, as you see in the pictures here, because you see, for example, one part here is my attic in the home where I'm living, which is all built up out of wood that dates from the 18th century, but that recalls also the wooden structure of the existing house that I had. So to create this kind of warmth that for me, I believe also, and serenity is adding value for the quality of life. I mean, I pay a lot of attention to the various textures. My work in general is very sensorial, very tactile. Again, mainly using those natural materials. I'm paying a lot of attention also to, let's call like, I mean, the heart of a house could also be like a fireplace. So I mean, in some ways, there is kind of like traditional way of approaching what a house was and what a house should be, and without let's say without forgetting or neglecting the essence of the house. I think as an architect or a designer, it's very, very important to take that with him or his into this journey in designing a house. I think like I believe like, I mean, a house, it's where it all started. I mean, when I was a young architect, I dived into the interiors, and from the interiors I conceived my exteriors. And it's all based on a sequence of all different elements that I build up these houses that at the end, again, are sanctuaries where people are feeling comfortable and where people are feeling good. I mean, that's my general aim and goal.
Vincent, I have here in my mind, my hands, the book about your body of work with a super nice foreword by actress Julianne Moore. Mm-hmm. She's a friend of you and you designed her apartment in New York. And I would like to read a couple of lines by her about you. She says, he cares about people and family and beauty in nature, light and art and dogs and children. You have 3 dogs, right? Natural stone and wood and linen and casement windows and matte surfaces. He is exuberant, joyful and generous and hardworking. I mean, I think that she sums up your desire to make us, right? Your personality that also is
of course. I mean, in my house, I mean, let's see, in my work is of course reflects the continuity of my personality as well. But on the other hand, again, what I was saying, like in the beginning of the talk, is and I really take care a lot about that. And it's something that I learned or I read from an incredible, famous interior designer, decorator, a French decorator in the 30s, which name is Jean-Michel Franck, had this pure, exquisite, beautiful interiors with very limited choices of materials, but very very refined. And actually, it's also all about getting rid of the excess. So I mean, when I started as a young architect already, I mean, my aim was creating this calmness and serenity. And I mean, and the goal was also all the time, like, I mean, whatever you add and whatever you add as extra layers, sometimes you need to get rid of it. I mean, getting really to the essence of what living is, what are the elements, what we need to live comfortable. We know we don't need excessive palettes of materials or exuberance in colors. You know, colors come from life, colors come from your dogs, as you said, colors comes from art, colors come from beautiful objects, but colors or beauty can also come from the emptiness. I mean, from the void and the calmness of, like you see here, a picture of my house in Portugal, where you see very limited material, a concrete, a dark brown tribal rug. You have some Brazilian wood, and then, I mean, very spare furniture pieces that are linked to the Brazilian culture, also to the Portuguese culture. And I mean, of course, you have the beautiful sunlight and the different shades of sun and light. So this is, for me, actually very, very important. And this belongs also to humanity. This is what makes human also feeling happy. And this is what we need. And I mean, this kind of calmness and beauty that I create through my work is definitely, it's appreciated by people like Julian. I mean, like, she really loves this style of my own houses here in Antwerp. She loves the house in Portugal, and she is also, I mean, a person that loves to live in this kind of environments that I created for her. So I mean,
Vincent, you are a kind of nice freak control freak, because I know that it's very important also the shade of the color of the concrete, right? For example, your house in Portugal has a kind of sand.
Well, I mean, this was actually, I mean, a very exciting process of the building here. I mean, like, most of my materials, they're derivating from nature, you know. I mean, like, you know, again, all these natural materials, they're derivating from nature. And specifically on the house in Portugal, I was inspired by the various tones of the sand of the dunes, because the house literally sits into a dune. And I really wanted to have the house kind of like emerging with the nature and with the color of the sand. So we have to do multiple exercises with finding the right tone and color tone of the concrete that really reflects the nature and the environment. And again, I mean, like, here as well, I mean, if you have these kind of houses that are sitting in this beautiful landscape where actually the nature is almost like a living painting. I mean, like, and you're capturing nature and the way how you interact with nature becomes also very important in all of my career. I mean, I could almost say that it's kind of like interiorizing the exterior. So literally, it's like you're bringing in the nature into your interiors and vice versa. So if you look from the inside to the outside, the nature is a living painting. And when you live with the nature, it's like bringing that nature again inside the interior. And that's also something which I'm doing with my materials, like creating very, like almost no barriers between the exteriors and the interiors. So I mean, like, and specifically in the house in Portugal, for example, you can slide open all the windows. So almost it becomes like an outdoor pavilion. And the only thing you see is that nature. And that nature is so captivating that even in the house in Portugal, there was even no need for bringing art in it, because the art is the nature. And this is what I'm trying to do in many of my projects, even in my house in Antwerp, where I have the possibility to bring in nature, even in secret gardens or patios. I will do it because, first of all, nature is a source of oxygen. I love, I mean, just the fact that it's something livable, plants, that it changes, and you know, when it moves with the wind and the rains and so on. So all of a sudden it becomes very poetic, and I always paid a lot of attention to it, and I'm always trying to bring nature into each of my projects.
And Vincent, this is a house called the Casa M in Portugal. You designed a year ago, right?
Yeah, I completed the house 1 year ago. So this summer was the second summer I passed it in. I mean, it was a very specific, project for me, because it's my first new build project that I did. And where, again, I mean, the interior is an extension of the exterior. And I mean, I really wanted to limit me to very primal forms. And of course, you can see, I think it's also very important for also each of the students, but every architect, is that we have to look sometimes back in the past. And you have, I mean, of course, we all have references and we all get inspired by many things we see. I'm like a sponge, so I'm constantly observing, constantly I'm thinking, reflecting, sketching mentally. And when I was starting the design process of my house in Portugal, I had some classic architecture in my background. I mean, for example, you can see there's a reminiscence of Luis Barragan, which is one of my favorite architects ever. I mean, like, he's an example and a source of inspiration. I mean, beyond. I mean, there is a bit of George O'Keeffe, like the Adobe architecture. I mean, there is also Utzon. I mean, like Villa Lis a little bit in Mallorca, which I really like again. So there are some elements. There's Casa Malaparte, talking about
Capri, right?
Casa Malaparte. I mean, this is one of a kind of an iconic building. Each time when I was in Capri, I go and see it from La Libera, and I loved it. I mean, the fact that you can really walk on top of the roof, and where the roof is completely tiled. I mean, actually, I took that with me in designing the Casa M, because you can walk on the roof.
We have all in mind Casa Malaparte, also thanks to the movie by Godard, Les Mépris, right? With Brigitte Bardot.
Exactly.
The terrace.
I was thinking, actually, I mean, when I was designing this house and when our house was finished, I'm pretty much a close friend with Luca Guadagnino. And I said, like, if he could make a remake of that film, before we met Brigitte Bardot, that would be for me the best. So, but it's true that, I mean, it's very delicate. And also what is very important is, again, the various textures. I mean, because in a way, even if you were saying that I'm aiming for perfection, I mean, there's also a beauty of imperfection. And I mean, this beauty of imperfection is also related to nature. I mean, a tree is never perfect because it all has these irregularities in the branches and the color of the leaves. I brought these colors, like also in Casa M. For example, the inside of the pool is this kind of dark green. The color of the tiles reflects to the color of the trees itself. You see here little sand structures on the patio, on the courtyard. The concrete itself is poured on site. So I mean, like, it's not prefabricated, it's poured on site. And all these kind of imperfections, together with the beauty of the wood and the Brazilian wood, makes this as a very unique house that literally blends and merges very well with the landscape and the nature.
And Vincent, how about this project?
This project is actually a project which we created in line with Casa M, but it's kind of like a vineyard in Belgium, so where the people are making their own wine and where you can degustate wine. And it's also, of course, based on this kind of typical barn structures. I'm a big fan, and you can see in my work in kind of like revisiting or reviewing or reconsidering the typical farm structures or barn structures. And actually, this was an exercise where we grouped this kind of barn structures around the patio, and then also highlighted with one central kind of wooden tower, which kind of like is also a little bit like a domestic functions that it holds in. But this building is a building where people can come and see how the wine is made. They can taste the wine. I mean, it's situated in Belgium, in the Flanders, so it's a very flat landscape. You can see, you know, once you enter and once you arrive the property, you have this huge wooden sliding door that you can open and close, and once you open, the nature literally comes in again. So again, I mean, this is again a project where I show incredibly the relation between nature and architecture.
A real conversation, right? A dialogue between
yes,
nature and architecture. Here again.
Here it's again my house, the house where I'm sitting in right now at the back of me. I mean, I remember when I bought this house and I started working on the house, the area where you see here was a covered area. It was actually on the ground floor, a house which was actually exploited and used by lawyers. So they had all their offices on the ground floor, and that specific area where you see the tree was a covered area with toilets and a waiting room. So when we started to dismantle the house, all of a sudden, I mean, I realized, I mean, there was this natural light coming in, and I got the opportunity to open it up on three sides, not only to bring in natural light to the adjacent spaces, but also to bring in that tree. And that tree is actually the epicenter, and it's kind of the protagonist, I mean, of the house, because all the functions and all the functions of my living room are concentrated around that secret garden, let's call it, with the Acer. And that's also something that I brought in my work at the beginning as a creative director for Molteni, for example.
For example, Vincent, from a big scale, let's go into product design. Since 2016, as Mark said before, you have been a creative director of Molteni, Dada, that is the biggest Italian furniture and design company based in Brianza between Lake Como and Milano, so close to Domus Academy area. And not only Molteni, but you have been collaborating with Floss here, for example, Olivari for door handle, Fantini for kitchen and bathroom, and many other companies. So, Vincent, your way to face a product design project, because you are first of all an architect. And in my mind, Vico Magistretti, Gio Ponti, Carlo Mollino, Albini, let's say the maestros, the old generation of architect and designer come to my mind. So what is your how you work with the product design?
Well, first of all, I mean, the people that contacted me in the beginning of my career, not actually in the beginning of the career, because I think I was already almost 10, 15 years busy as an architect, who contacted me to see where I was interested to design products. They were all actually more impressed and attracted by my work as an architect. So, somehow, even in Belgium, I mean, we have this culture of, you know, of having a house and living nicely in our houses. I mean, we really love it. And I created my style at the beginning. These people, they were really, again, impressed by how I was dealing with these interiors. And they wanted to know if it was possible to get some of my products or some of my tailor-made products or directions of my interiors that I did in some of my projects could be distracted and could be considered as a single produced or single industrialized product. And for me, it was very new because, you know, I'm an architect, as you said, I'm not a product designer, so I didn't have that much of know-how of the technology and of the manufacturing of all it, besides, of course, making architecture and finishing the interiors, specifically like the fixed furniture, like cupboards and bathrooms and cabinets and so on. But I mean, diving into the product design, I mean, obviously I needed to have the support of all the know-how of these big companies. And of course, to name some of them, we have some products of Floss that I designed a couple of years ago. I mean, starting in the left with infrastructure, which is like an eye wing to Bauhaus, because they asked me to design architectural lighting. And instead of doing something invisible, I really showed the fixture itself, like almost the light being transported underneath the ceiling. That's why it's called infrastructure. And then, of course, the little reading lamp that we just finished right now, which you can read. I mean, you can read the resemblance between infrastructure on the left and then this kind of beautiful, discrete, oblique lighting reading lamp on the right. So it's all connected with that language, which we call architecture. And also with Molteni, I mean, when I came in contact with Molteni.
Here we have Paul, right?
Here we have Paul. Molteni, I mean, the family Molteni was also fascinated by my home, by my living, by my domestic projects. I mean, the way that I had a lot of knowledge with residential projects. And that's how the collaboration started with Molteni, where actually one of the first products is Paul, and which actually is the kind of protagonist of the products that I designed for Molteni, because it really still looks as a sofa, but it's just the way how I kind of like modify the dimensions, how I modify some subtle details without neglecting the archetypical typology of what a sofa is, actually, what people all know. But it's just a matter of like, you know, stretching some of the dimensions. I mean, here also the fact that it's a very deep sofa, but then instead of having thicker armrests or thicker backrests, we made them very subtle. And you know, and the stitching of the armrest and the backrest, they continue in the legs. And then within this kind of rigid form, but yet very comfortable, I'm adding this kind of super extra blown up, very soft and sophisticated and very warm cushion. So, and all of this subtlety variations and shifting in dimensions made Paul a success, and made Paul, I mean, a very strong protagonist with its own identity.
And Vincent, I have this quotation by you when we talked last week. I'm not a designer for the sake of design. I hate the word trend. And I do think that Paul and also this bookshelf, they really embodies to avoid trends, right? From you?
I mean, I've always did it. I mean, from the beginning of my career, I mean, I always wanted to go to the pureness and the essence of my in everything what I'm doing as my work, even in building an architecture or whatever structure, or designing a product. I mean, I think what is very important, and I mean already the last couple of years before COVID and so on, I mean, I already, but also in general in my mindset was also like, you know, we don't have to force ourselves too much in finding out or discovering new forms. I mean, like, you know, for me, it's of course you need sometimes a little bit, and you need a little bit, you know, out of the box as well. And I'm always trying to do it, but in a very subtle, poetic way, or in a very surprising way, so that still people are seeing that it's not something, you know, on the repeating bottom that we're pushing, but that, you know, with slightly reviewing things or reconsidering or decomposing and rebuilding it again, we can come up with some fresh and new ideas without losing the integrity and the authenticity of what the piece or the space or the architecture means. And this is what I was meaning. I mean, like sometimes there is an overconsumption, and there is sometimes an people are sometimes at some point losing there's a lack of awareness. And I mean, there's awareness is that everybody and every designer and architect should be aware of what we're doing, and should also be aware not only of designing the form or the meaning of the form, the typology of the form, but also the durability, the sustainability, and also being aware of the way how it's made. So it means, like, I mean, the craftsmanship, the bringing the different joints all together, bringing subtly some variations in materials, like here the leather with wood for B&B, or a beautiful weaving and a backrest that reminiscence to the Scandinavian weaving for an armchair that I designed for an American brand, David Sutherland. You know, it's playing a little bit with the proportions and sections of the structure or the skeleton of the furniture, or in general. So these kind of little things, these kind of little twisted modifications is what I'm aiming for. And on the other hand, I mean, yes, these products are modern, yes, they're new, but there is always an eye wink towards the past, that people can recognize it without, you know, ending in this kind of like empty romanticism or this kind of, you know, soulless retro style, which obviously we are not. We are modernists in heart and core. So I mean, this is what I want to say. So
also because Vincent, Domus Academy wants always to look at the future, but always looking also back at the past. And the school itself was founded by Branzi, Mendini, so we are in the middle ourselves. Vincent, before you mention durability, and it came to my mind, if you agree, the concept of longevity that is made of taste and material. So to have a long life, you have to have a taste that is not just for a year, so it's not trendy, as we said before, and the importance of very good material to last, right? To be strong over the years. So it came to my mind.
I mean, it's always also a matter of respect. I think that's the main important thing. I mean, it's a matter of respect. It's not that everything has to be eco-proofed or whatsoever, but I mean, I'm aiming for sustainable and eco-friendly materials and so on. And then talking again, I mean, about, and that's also what also with Molteni. I mean, this is a big industry. I mean, but I mean, still, I mean, designing and creating those beautiful furniture pieces for them shows that even behind that industry, you can still feel the hand of the manufacturer, of the person, the artisan who manufactures with passion these pieces. And obviously, the support, the incredible and exquisite support from companies like Molteni is that they have an incredibly knowledge of technology as well, but we call it hidden technology. And this kind of hidden technology is needed to make sure that we can produce furniture pieces or elements that are needed for the house within a larger, let's say, amount, and also not giving up the quality of the piece, so that we make sure when our consumers have those products in their hands, they even don't realize that this is made in a big company. And this is the beauty of working with companies like Molteni, because
Italian company, Vincent.
Italian company. This is also, I mean, of course, made in Italy. I mean, this is what we want and what we love to hear. As you know, for me, made in Italy, we will talk maybe later a little bit, is something which is already part of my heritage and of my personality since I left actually school and since I finished my school in the university.
Sorry, a preview of what comes later. Vincent, Fantini, Italy again. This is, you also work with Fantini, that is super high-end kitchen and bathroom fixture company.
Exactly.
And also in a little things like this, there is a lot of story, right?
Well, I mean, when Fantini approached me, I mean, of course, first of all, they were also, I mean, aware and big fan of my work. Also, again, this timelessness of it. I mean, this kind of modern classic attitude in my work, like more like a passepartout, something that, you know, that enters in their collection, which is again at some time not too retro but modern at the same time again. So I got this idea, I mean, to review and revisit again this kind of more classical, like cross-step kitchen and bathroom fixtures. But then it's again all about the materiality, about the radiuses, about the ergonomics, because it might be that it's only like a cross. But on the other hand, I mean, when you touch it and you see that the fact that that's on the part underneath where you have the handles that's rounded up makes the steps absolutely ergonomic in its purity and its simplicity. And obviously, we have this incredible, beautiful finishings in it, and of course, again, the hidden technology, which is all inside and which is of course developed by Fantini.
Vincent, before you mention Milano, Italy, your long-time relationship with us. So here we have something by Ettore Sozzas. What is the role of Italy?
Well, I mean, the role of Italy has been, I mean, I've been educated with Italy. I mean, it's almost like it was given into my mouth as food on a spoon. I've always been a big fan of Italy because of its culture, the history of Italy, but the general art of living as well. I mean, fashion, design, food. So, and obviously, I mean,
I know that you speak quite well Italian.
I speak my Italian quite fluently. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't be creative director of Molteni either. But I love it. So it's kind of like my second language. And I feel like in my past life, I've been an Italian, but going back to my link with Italy, I studied between 1980 and 1985, 5 years architecture at the peak of postmodernism. So literally,
you studied in Belgium, right?
I studied in the University of Ghent, St. Lucas, where actually there were other art disciplines, but I was at the peak of postmodernism. So of course, I was a kid of postmodernism. So we were educated with people like Alchemia, with Alessandro Mendini, with Ettore Sozzas, with a whole group of people. And we just at the end, around 85, it was the beginning, the start of deconstructivism, with people like with Zaha Hadid, Koop Himmelblau, there were others. But for me, mainly it was all about these primary form languages, very manneristic, very exuberant in colors, although referring also to the classic architecture somehow, but with a very playful and colorful way of dealing with it. So with that, being passionate already, I thought like, okay, after my studies, I have to go to Italy. And I really want to see and learn more about what I've learned in the university. I want to see with my own eyes and practice it. And literally, I became the first assistant of Aldo Cibic, who was at that time an associate of Sozzas Associati and of Memphis at the time, because the group was called Memphis. And that's how it all started. So I started to work in Italy as a young architect, working for these people. And since then, I always had this incredibly long-lasting relationship with Italy. I came back in the late 80s. I created a style which was obviously like opposite to what I was doing as postmodernism. Maybe I was like, I couldn't digest anymore the amount of colors and patterns and forms. And I was aiming for a style that was more quiet. I was traveling a lot to Mediterranean countries. I was traveling a lot to Africa, to Morocco specifically. I was always inspired and by this very tribal architecture, the pureness of it, the essence of the forms. I was all the time having people like, modernists in my mind, where you have this calm and serene interiors, like this house, which I love, is a house of Schindler. A mid-century modernist, a house which is situated in Los Angeles, which I visited a couple of times, and which I love the colors, the materials, the fact that it blends with the interior and exterior. Also a little bit Japanese touches, which obviously I also like. Very primary forms, beautiful materials. We have people like Frank Lloyd Wright, which I visited some.
Here we have a detail of
the concrete block houses with the imprint, beautiful solid constructions, also related to to the Inca culture, because he was impressed to the Inca culture, but also
this house is called Ennis Brau. I have been there, and it's very famous because of Blade Runner movie.
Exactly. It's in a beautiful house, and you have a couple of these kind of block cement houses that he made in concrete. Of course, everybody knows falling water, but these houses were so unique because they were all crafted. They're kind of like, they're sculptures. At the end, they're sculptures, and also the way, all these people, of course, they also worked on the interiors. If you see Frank Lloyd Wright's interiors are reminiscent, they're incredible. And the way how they interact with the architecture, again, is one of a kind. We have, of course, in Italy, someone who I really carry on my heart here is Carlo Scarpa. He was, for me, the master in detailing, in materials, in architecture, super poetic, very emotional, very tactile, very refined, and yet very Italian. So, all these people, constantly were kind of like crisscrossing my mind all of the time. And this, I believe that everybody should know all these people and get inspired by these great masters, as I do. And these kind of subtle details that I'm bringing in my own projects, they always will refer to any kind of these grand masters.
And Vincent, it's very nice how you are so contemporary, so fresh, but at the same time, you are not obsessed with technology, innovation, but you respect a lot the past, and you are not looking for new, but right, you are demonstrating the value of
exactly. That's how my style was born. I mean, if you see my work in the late 80s, I mean, or just early 90s, and you will see it later. I mean, when we show some images of my living room, it's pretty much very actual. So I mean, like even my work, and specifically when we were making the last two monographs of the last 20 years covered of my career, and we did it not chronologically, but we did it we did it chronologically, but not in themas. I mean, it's very interesting to see how work from 25 years old is still very actual and still very inspiring. And I mean, it's something that comes up naturally for me. I mean, I've always been like that. I mean, this kind of sobriety is something that always appealed on me. I mean, always also in the way how I live, also in the way how I enjoy life. Also, I mean, I don't like, even like in food, for example. I mean, nothing is so good as just the pureness of Italian kitchen. You know what I mean? Italian food, the pure essence where you taste the ingredients, where you see the ingredients, where you taste the authenticity of the ingredients. I think you should consider my work and the way how I perceive and look at architecture a little bit the same. I mean, it's mainly variations with the same ingredients, but always trying, I mean, to evolve and to come up with some sparkling new details, but not into your face. I mean, I will always do it with a lot of respect. And again, my aim is to create quality and not quantity. And I mean, this is something which makes that, you know, we're trying to be perfectionists. We are really diving into each of our projects, and we're very challenging and very demanding for ourselves, but we will always look at it with a lot of respect. And I think this is also very, very important, any attitude of any designer and architect.
And I'm happy, and I hope Mark can agree that you are opening the new series, Disrupting Patterns, that is not new, but is, I think, to have a strong vision. It can be whatever, but you are the demonstration that quality, looking for perfection. I mean, you are Vincent Van Duysen with your own strong viewpoint and philosophy. But Vincent, how did you become Vincent Van Duysen?
Well, how did I become Vincent Van Duysen? I mean, we can go back actually to my period when I was living and working in Italy as a young architect, which was like 86, 87. And I remember when I came back to Belgium, and I found out this beautiful place where you have a picture here in front of you, which was kind of like a lofty space in Antwerp. And also with all the knowledge of my travels and the fact that literally I was already aiming for a simple, more desaturated, I call it, style. I created this living room, which mainly also reflects a little bit about, I mean, the essence and the way how we Belgians are living, and I mean how we see life is. I mean, this use of natural materials like natural flax, Belgian linens, natural looking carpets, beautiful naturally made divanos, like sofas, very limited furniture pieces, books, because, you know, I love books. This created that my work became very sensorial and very sensual. And actually, it was a very small little picture that Ilse Crawford, at that time, editor-in-chief of the British Elle Decoration, came across my interior, and she fell in love with the interior. She said, Vincent, what you're doing here is something totally new. I mean, we're ending a period of postmodernism, which was very hard to live with and within. I mean, you're bringing that touch of humanity in it. I mean, I'm an editor where everything is around quality of living. I mean, it's all dedicated to the people that are living in the house. She was the one that started photographing interiors with people in it, you know, so that people really could understand what living is about. What is this art of living? What is this all about? So people were really feeling very comfortable about it. And she gave me like a 10-page publication, which I thought, like, my God, it was my first ever publication. And the title was Sensual Home. So, and also
the title of the most famous book by
her, yes. And I was so flattered. Because, you know, even without knowing myself, that I created like a new style, whatever you call it, but that, you know, as a reaction to postmodernism, whatever you call it, creating this kind of calmness all of a sudden in an interior that I still take with me and still project it. This made this interior very unique. As you know, I mean, even after Ilse discovered it like more than 20 years ago, last year, this room was voted as one of the 25 iconic rooms by New York Times T magazine. So this was for me, I mean, incredibly a big honor again. And still, when I see this room or the house where I'm living in it, I mean, it's the same. So it's still the same, let's say, sensation that you have. It's the same typology of colors. I have my piles of books still around. It's still this kind of calmness and emptiness, but yet very warm that I have here in my houses. And this is what I really, what I want in all of my.
I think that timeless, right? This success is the best satisfaction for an architect, that you don't go out of fashion.
I don't see anything, but I mean, in my point of vision, yes. I mean, I love this kind of timelessness in it, and it gives you a lot back at the end. And again, you can change subtly with objects you're living with your dogs that are living species that are giving extra life to your room. So, but again, it's more about getting rid of the excess than adding of the excess. And it already started 25 years ago.
But Vincent, so now you are from your home in Belgium. You are not going to the office, right? Because of lockdown everywhere. But how is your life at the studio usually, and today?
Well, I mean, since March, obviously, I mean, we've been locked down and I'm locked up in my room. As you see here are two images of the house where I'm living in right now.
It's not the studio, it's the house again.
No, this is the house. No, this is the house of where I'm living in right now. It's again, I mean, you see it. I mean, it's being disconnected. I mean, it's a feeling of being disconnecting from the outside. I mean, and specifically in a period where we're living right now, where people have to live more with their inner selves and people are more focused on their inner selves. I consider my house again as a sanctuary that feeds me, that nourishes me, that boosts my creativity. And of course, I mean, I still go to the office, even though we're very limited people there because it's all Corona approved. I mean, the best place where I can create and where I can calm down my senses is this house where you see those two pictures from right now.
How many people do you have on your team?
We have like around 30 people. We are fluctuating between 25 and 30 people. We have a very international staff. So I mean, I have Italians, I have people from Portugal, I have people from France. I mean, like, so we have people from a little bit all over. But it fluctuates. Obviously, most of the people, they're working from their homes right now. But of course, with all the digital tools that we have right now, I mean, we're even more focused right now than before. The communication is not that always accurate, but still, we're getting used to it. After all those months being in lockdown and being from one Zoom meeting to the other, it gives a feeling of satisfaction, and it doesn't affect negatively our creativity, I would say.
And Vincent, I'm curious, are you working new or upcoming project that maybe you can reveal today?
I mean, I'm working actually, I mean, on a very nice and a very important hospitality project in Portugal, which is nearby where my house is situated. I think this is an extremely important project. We're working on very interesting new projects for Molteni and Dada. I mean, so be prepared because, you know, we're gonna unveil next year somewhere in September. Hopefully when the fair is going to be there, we're going to unveil a new direction, so which we're very excited about it. I'm finishing and I'm still working on a couple of projects in Los Angeles, which for me is extremely important. We just handed over one house in Los Angeles, which is my way how I perceive mid-century architecture, but then, you know, with my tastes and now we're even working in Bangkok on a residential project. So there are many projects going on. So a lot to look forward to. We're also working on a new smaller monograph, which is edited in Portugal. It's called AMAG. We have already one AMAG, so we're working on a second AMAG. And I might also work on specifically on one book which will be dedicated to Casa and my house in Portugal. I think this is one of the most exciting projects also I'm working on right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that you love books, and we can see also this from the picture.
Yes.
Vincent, I think that, I mean, I feel super fine and super happy about our conversation.
Me too.
And, yes, we were, I mean, it was, I would love to ask more questions, of course, but I think that it's enough and maybe we can organize
con un
something.
aperitivo, con un caffè la prossima volta a Milano.
Milano, correct. We can invite you.
We can do that. That would be nice to continue our conversation. I would love to.
Yeah, because I have many questions. For example, the curtains as an architectural elements, but maybe let's keep this.
If I have to say it only in one word, I mean, curtains bring softness. I mean, sometimes in this kind of hardcore, hard sell of architecture, you know, where we think about structure and building, sometimes you need some softness. And not only in your house, I mean, softness belongs to each of our humans. So that's for me why I'm using curtains in my house.
We have the images with the curtains as a protagonist, and also I saw this element in your book next to me. So Vincent, thank you so much for being with us. And thank you again, Vincent. Grazie.
Grazie a voi.
And then Mark, if you would like to say something also.
Okay, thank you very much, Caterina. Vincent, it's been a real pleasure listening to you as a designer, talk about your ideas, talk about your projects. And also it was really fun hearing about your connection with Italy and how that's influenced your work and your percorso professionale, your professional history. So that's been really great. I hope you can stay with us for a little bit and so we can open up some questions to some of our students and guests. In this, I'd like to, a couple questions have come in already, but I'd like to open up the questions to a limited group of our students. In this past couple of weeks, we've had a discussion group, informal discussion group by an interdisciplinary group of students, limited. So there was 5 or 6 students, 2 from product design, 2 from living in interior design, and 2 from architecture. So they got together and discussed and looked at your work, and so they've come up with a series of questions. So the first ones I'd like to dedicate to that, and so they're coming in. I'll go ahead and read them for you, and then afterwards, if we have some time, we'll open up to the other guests.
Good.
Okay, so let's see. We see Mariana. Thank you very much for your presentation. Vincent, you discussing the importance of essence in your work. How do you know when to achieve or how to achieve that atmosphere? How do you know how do you know when you've achieved that atmosphere when you're in the designing process?
Well, I mean, that's what I was saying already. I mean, a little bit in the conversation is when we're starting to design, we're reviewing internally a lot. I mean, the designs. I mean, internally with the office, with my assistants, with my team, and I think, I mean, we have to be very careful and very in terms that, you know, I always said, like, we don't have to be that easily satisfied in what we're doing. I mean, sometimes it happens that we're putting a design on the side, and that only I will look back at it after a couple of days or even weeks, and that I will review it completely different, because, I mean, my mindset might be changing during the period of starting the design and then revisiting or reviewing the design. So it's all being that looking at it with a critical eye and making sure that whatever decision and design direction you make is the right one. I mean, and again, for me, it's always going to the essence. I mean, like, again, something that is not needed to answer or to fulfill the needs of my clients, or that doesn't fulfill the functional program of what I have to deal with, then we have to access it. So, I mean, this kind of extra, we will get rid of it, and we will definitely go back to the beginning. It happens sometimes that we start, and then we kind of like derivating. And then after a couple of weeks, actually we come back to our initial idea. So this is a little bit how it works. And again, if it's in terms of design itself, like, for example, designing a sofa, I mean, of course, it's always the functionality that will be important. So it's kind of like form follows function somehow. You know, I'm a modernist, and I think it's very important that that is something what what designers should be aware of, that, you know, this design is also there to comfort people and not only because of the sake of the form. So this is also something that people have to take in their mind to come actually to that essential and pureness design language that I owe actually.
Okay, thank you very much. That's I think that's interesting input for our students and our guests, and also the fact that the design process is really a process. There's part of revision and reflection, critical reflection, that otherwise it'd be very difficult to arrive at such sophisticated work. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have another question from John Connor. Thank you for the inspiring presentation. We have read that empathy is an important element of your work. How do you get to a deeper understanding of your clients or the users? How do you translate that into an appropriate emotion or soul of the space?
Mm-hmm. It's a very important one, and I'm taking care of a lot of this one. I mean, first of all, I think each of us as an architect or designer, and we all are, we're psychologists. I mean, but not only for our clients, but also for ourselves. So it means like literally, if you're not able to dive in your own soul, I mean, you cannot even dive in someone else's soul. So I mean, literally, it's all about chemistry. And I mean, that chemistry is something that you feel from the beginning, from the first encounter, the first meeting with your client or with your client. And if there is no chemistry, it will never work. I mean, the collaboration will never work in the right direction. It will work against you, and you won't feel any sense of empathy, and you will never be able to fulfill your client, neither yourself as a designer or an architect, to come up and create beautiful things. I mean, this is everything. I mean, of course, you have to open up your ear, you have to listen, you have to communicate, you have to know and understand who your clients are, why they're coming to you, what they're expecting from you, and this is so important as a base, as a starting point of each of our collaborations as an architect.
Okay, great, thank you. We have a question from Haya. How would the experience change in residential houses post-COVID? Your design suggests getting away from the city. So how would this approach be if we are already disconnected?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's true that this period of COVID and being in lockdown and being, you know, locked down with ourselves gives us, of course, much more time to reflect on living, you know, within our own spaces, within our own homes. And I can trust that since lockdown in March, and it's a little bit an awkward and weird world we're living in, you know, where we know that economically COVID might have a lot of negative consequences, where, for example, we as architects, we got a lot of requests of abroad from people that want to redo or want to start mainly residential projects, because again, I mean, people are going to focus much more on the quality of life in general, not only with themselves, but with their loved ones, their friends, their family. And even in lockdown, where there will be maybe other rules of distances and whatsoever, it's true that it will affect also. I mean, for example, in public buildings or restaurants, it might affect that there will be different rules that we have to take in consideration and adapt our designs. But specifically in the homes, you can feel people are much more paying attention to their proper homes. And then this is mainly also due to COVID and due to the fact that we're living since a couple of months now in COVID. It was expected. We also see it in general. I mean, with the licensed people I'm working with, like Multani, I mean, we had to reinvent ourselves. It's true, to a digital work to make sure that people can feel our products, even if they're physically difficult to touch and to dangle. But there are ways to do it, and there are ways to do it. There are ways to digitally do beautiful storytelling, to comfort again the people that, you know, that the quality of life now is even more important than pre-COVID time.
Okay, great. We have a question from Dan. Dan is one of our international students from the Netherlands. Dan, thanks you for the insightful lecture, for your thoughts on your work. And he has two questions. The first of all, having started at Molteni, what are some of the challenges and changes that need to be made or still need to be made in their vision in order to be current in today's context?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, Molteni is a brand that goes beyond manufacturing only furniture. I mean, it's a brand that always has been dedicated to the art of living and also dedicated to various cultural disciplines, and where actually architecture is one of their main topics. But I mean, they're living, I mean, with film makers. I mean, photography is very important for them. They have an incredible heritage of great architects they're working with. And actually what is very important with them, they always stand for ultimate quality, very sophisticated, very elegant, yet, I mean, understated in the way that, you know, it's not just for the sake of doing things differently. I mean, it's all about quality, about craftsmanship. I mean, aiming that, you know, the execution is pretty much high end. And then for the rest, I mean, again, our world, of my world that I created together with Molteni, is a world that is dedicated to the art of living. It's dedicated to the human people, and it's there where we want to differentiate ourselves with other bigger companies, because I created a world that is dedicated to the home. I mean, to the home, and I mean, with Molteni, I wanted to get out of the fact that, you know, we don't going to show furniture pieces in an environment which is only related to a showroom environment, like a, you know, like an exhibition hall. But I was the one that brought in, you know, the fact that, you know, I created a Molteni home, and we're still evolving into that. I mean, you will see in the next phases. I mean, beginning in the first years, I'm 5 years creative director, it was pretty much related to my own work in general, related to my own portfolio of architecture, because I did a lot of residential work. And again, I mean, my work is modern and is accurate and is now, of course, it's very personal, but of course, Molteni chosen for me because they felt very connected with my DNA, and I felt very connected with their DNA, because, you know, working with, I mean, with presenters like people like Mida and Joe Ponti or Scarpa, to name some, and then, you know, being a Belgian art director in the steps of these big masters, to do the same. It could only be like, you know, to give it a new twist, to bring an injection, my aesthetics and style in it, but again, without neglecting the main purpose is the art of living. And I mean, this art of living, we're still evolving in it. And again, you know, we have to be patient a little bit, but we're inventing it again, and it's going to become even more modern at some point, more edgier, but again, always, I mean, guaranteeing the quality of life.
Okay.
It's a perfect match, you and Molteni, the perfect couple, partner in crime, you guys.
Partner in crime, exactly.
Absolutely. Dan had read an interview from somewhere, I'm not sure where, and he read that you don't actually have a piece of furniture of Molteni in your home. If you had to choose one, what would you choose and why?
Paul.
Yeah, I mean, it would be Paul or Lucas. It's actually it's a continuation of Paul, because actually the Paul and Lucas are a little bit based off the sofas that I have. The thing is, like, I mean, in terms of my own furniture, I always, you know, and apparently it's a phenomenon that also exists with other architects. You know, when you're living nonstop from mornings until evening, 7 by 7, with your projects and with your world of architecture, in your own proper house, sometimes, you know, you want things that become more neutral, that become passepartout, that people, some pieces that are not really recognizable. You know, it can be like a typical English reading armchair, very comfortable, that, that comes from the countryside, and that, we put another cover on it. Or of course, it could be some vintage pieces, like, I'm collecting pieces like Pierre Jeanneret, because I really love the structures of these furniture pieces, because they're so authentic, they're so pure, and they're linked also to the Indian culture, which I'm a big fan from Indian as well. I'm also, there are some designs of mine, like some tables are my design, but they're not branded. I mean, we're trying to avoid too much to brand, and that's even with Molteni. Even if it's a brand, it's a brand in a very delicate way. And I mean, again, it's about the beauty of each of these crafted pieces that I want to bring up. And this is also the reason why it would be even very hard for me, to be honest, to choose any of the pieces that I designed for them. But definitely, I would consider, changing my sofa here and replacing it by, an over-dimensioned Paul or Lucas, for example, to name one.
Okay, thank you. That's quite interesting. Your comment on not attempting to create a branded environment. Right? That's where each of your homes has its own personality. Celeste has a question. Let's see. She says, your interiors, the impression is that you have a specific taste for warm furniture. And you specifically claim that you're not a minimalist. What she asks, what would be the difference between your work and that of a minimalist? Perhaps you already answered a little bit of that in the session with Katarina, where you talked about your materials and textures. But if you want to add anything else.
Well, first of all, I've always been a person that never liked to be categorized. That's in my nature. I never looked at any kind of trends around me. Everything comes, very intuitively. So I really don't like that. And talking about minimalism, I always refer to the minimal art in the Americans, my minimal art related to the real artists. And I'm an art collector, and I love minimal art. But if you think about when they kind of like bombarded minimalism as a universal style, for me it looked like something very cold. So and a distance, and even an empty space can be very poetic according to the use of materials, the textures, the way how you form and you design the space, and how it's interact with light, with inside outside. It can be super poetic, like any kind of, like, for example, a Romanesque convent inside of France. Nothing is so beautiful as some sacred architecture that might be very minimal, because it's about emptiness and about, contemplation and being, in a calm and a serene environment, but then seeing the beauty of the materials, the beauty of the proportions, the beauty of the light comes in, and maybe some limited, beautiful, warm objects that I add, or layers of materials. So I would say that no, I'm not a minimalist, because it links to the coldness of it. If you would say, like, I'm a warm minimalist, to name one, I would say yes.
Okay, great. We'll open up for a couple more questions. There's lots of questions coming in.
21 question.
Yeah, lots of questions coming, which is great, because that means there's lots of interest here. And I'll have to just choose some of them. So I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to get to all of them. But here's one that, and I'm not sure if Tanya's probably one of our students, but I like this because it's about where the project starts. She asks, she says that she appreciates you sharing your view, but she's curious about where it all starts. Where does the project start? The concept. Where does the idea come from?
No, it's not that the concept comes from one specific direction or perspective, and that's also why we called also a little bit, the subject of this conversation, my mind never stops sketching. And it's actually my associate and my office, my right hand, who came across the sentence years ago. I'm barely a person that starts from a blank sheet of paper and starts to sketch, although, I can sketch, and I sketch sometimes. And obviously also in a world where it's digitalization, It also, I mean, it's another way of presentation, another way of creating and developing each of the designs. Where it all starts all in my mind, but it starts specifically also, I mean, with the client. It starts with the client, and it starts with the context. It starts with the conversation. It starts with the context that might be very inspiring. It might be also that it's in a different culture, another country that is different than mine, so that actually culturally wise, or when I dive into the culture or the history of that particular context or country where I'm interfering, I got some other elements of inspiration. But it can start with anything. It can start with an image that grabbed my eyes or my mind. I don't know, within a book, within a photography, within art, within a conversation, with it, you know, whatever. I mean, it could be literally whatever. And I mean, my mind is constantly, I mean, it's constantly in a process of sketching, because I'm very observative and I am very intuitive. So I mean, very fast. I will actually create in my mind ideas and concepts that I will transmit either with a conversation to my collaborators or with a very limited sketch. And then actually it goes back and forward. It's always back and forward, and I will nourish that idea and that concept all the time. If it's narrative, just by talking, or with some referential things that I've seen, it might be a material, it might be a picture again, I will show them. And the big lines, we will set up all together with the group of people or the team that I'm working on that project. And then it's a constant process of back and forward until we fine tune the project and until we said, okay, this is it. But it's a continuous process.
Okay, fantastic. Another question that's maybe a little bit related to this about the approach toward designing at different scales. The question regards the integration of landscape, architecture, and interiors. Does it change if the context is in a dense urban situation?
Of course.
Or not? And specifically, the guest cites here the recent retail store you've completed in Bangkok, and asks if the focus is about creating the calm interior space, if that is one of the guiding ideas.
This I didn't understand. The purpose is what?
The first part of the question is whether how much the context impacts on the approach.
The context.
The context, whether it's an urban context, whether it's a rural context.
Okay.
And then the second part of the question, or asks, is one of the main goals is to create a calm interior space.
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm trying to aim. I mean, of course, if it's in an urban context, we always try to bring patios, or let's say like little secret gardens, or even little kind of like outdoor, semi-outdoor places that could be an extension of the interior. Let's call it like an outdoor living room versus an indoor living room, where we literally continue the same materials from the inside to the outside, where there's no physical barrier between those materials or no transition. We will try to bring green in. It can be even only one tree, as I did in my house here. And I mean, the purpose and the impact of one tree in terms of having a contact with the exterior and with the landscape and the nature, even if it's in a limited space, is very meaningful. And obviously in an urban context and where there's denser buildable surfaces, it's sometimes hard to bring the green in, but we will always do. In Bangkok, we did it on the outside, we did it on the rooftop terraces, we'll do it in the inside, we'll do it all of the time, where in the outside, where we are in a broader and in a more vaster landscape environment, we will of course taking care of the orientation, where the sun comes up and goes down. We will also do studies of light. We will look if there's any specific important trees we want to focus on and bring in and to relate with the architecture. I mean, there are many things, but again, where we do that, I mean, where we bring in literally the exterior into the interior, it's what I said at the beginning. It's almost bringing nature in as living paintings. And on the other hand, of course, in terms of in talking ecologically, I mean, we know that the green ecologically has its benefits. I mean, in terms of CO2. So I mean, specifically in cities, I mean, we should be aware, and that's also the reason why we are aiming for much more green in cities where the urban density is vaster. But it is something that we will always try to do so. I mean, whether it's in an urban context or in a more broader land or in a more natural countryside context, we will always do.
Okay, very good. We're sort of running out of time, but the two last questions. One, there's a couple questions that revolve around your process and the use of technology in the design process and in sketching. How important is sketching for you, and how important is the development in CAD?
Well, first of all, I am not a CAD person or CAD drawer at all. I mean, literally, I finished my university in '85, and I've never ever studied CAD drawings. I mean, limited at the beginning, but I never did it because I started very fast on my career, where actually in the beginning it was mostly based on hand sketches. And then, you know, some of my team members, even in the beginning of my career, they would take it over and would draw it on CAD. In terms of product design, I mean, of course, I have product designers in my office because we have interior architects, we have architects, and we have product design people in it. So the product designers, which literally got the knowledge to develop products, they will help me to translate my first sketch ideas into a proper sketch design. Whatever is technology will be always developed together with the producer of the products. But we will never start around the technology to create a form around a technology. I will never do that, because if you do that, you highlight too much that technology and you forget the essence of the design again. So this is what I'm really aiming for. I mean, like, you would barely see it, but if you look, for example, at the cupboard systems with Molteni, they're packed with technology, but because then afterwards, once we define the form and we define the outlet and the proportions of each of the designs with the knowledge together of Molteni and us, there's an incredibly extreme interaction, how we can incorporate in a very efficient, very discrete way, the technology that is needed to make that specific product being, you know, a high-end product that performs at its best. That's how we do.
Wow, really good. It's very good insight into the process of designing, actually, your process of designing, and of not being controlled by technology in terms of computer technology in the process, but also in the technology of manufacturing and what goes into making the piece. Okay. We'll have one last question, and this is from Massimiliano, and I hope I don't put you on the spot too much with the last question.
He's a professionist, so.
Is there?
Please, Caterina, read my question. So, Mark, thank you.
Is there still a company or a specific company that you would like to collaborate with? And is there a wish you have in your drawer that you can reveal to us?
I mean, I'm a very happy man. I think I'm a super happy man. And honestly, no. I mean, I have some previous great collaborations. I have some ongoing collaborations. But again, I've been super honored to be appointed creative director since 5 years right now, and which will definitely extend. You know, this is it's been a very fruitful collaboration ever. That is really kind of like the cherries on the cake for me, and also an incredibly honor being a non-Italian and leading creatively, artistically, such an important company. So I'm a very happy man.
Okay, very good. Vincent, thank you so much for being with us tonight and being very generous about giving feedback and talking about your design process. This is something which is invaluable for our students.
Well, this is what I hope. I'm always saying, like, you know, the world inspires me, and I'm here also to inspire the world. So I think I'm very happy to be part of this lecture, this conversation, and I really do hope that all of the audience, the students, they were inspired about the talk.
Vincent, I can't wait for the aperitivo, but also I got a lot of messages and people want to visit because I'm in
okay.
Portugal.
We will arrange a tour. We will arrange an open house. So
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Buona serata, bonne soirée, and see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, we hope to see you soon. Okay, thank you, Vincent.
Bye.
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 Grazie.